On air.
On air. It's been a while since you've been on air with me, buddy.
Yeah, it's
We've
true.
had a summer going on. You know, we do our ZD TVs here on Fridays for better or worse, right? And let's see, I didn't put my little screen share up. I gotta get my screen share working. Entire screen. Share screen three. What are we gonna do today, Ken? We're gonna talk about self-hosting browser. How exciting is that? That's pretty exciting, I think. One of the things we normally do, other than give a readout of the weather here in the Rochester, New York area, which is a little gloomy today. My wife is golfing. Hopefully, she won't get rained on. Or maybe, maybe she does get rained on and maybe we get a chuckle out of it. Maybe I get a chuckle out of it. One of the things we often do is we will read the change log. So let's go ahead and look at that change log real quick. Important thing to note is we've had a couple releases 28.2, 28.3, 28.4. Really just one release with a couple of oops, we had to fix this and oops, we had to fix that.
So no major features.
I mean, yeah, and not in the last two, but in 28.2, there was a big change that happened when it comes to the quick start. So if you're somebody who looks at the quick start and uses the quick start, you want to make sure that you read the change log and understand the changes in the environment variables, particularly if you use any of those environment variables, that sort of stuff. So the quick start all should just work. If it doesn't just work, then we'll get Jeff involved because he had the
He is the
most.
master.
He had the most to do with it, or me, and then we'll get you fixed up. Let's see what else was interesting in there. There was something else I thought that was interesting. Lots and lots of bug fixes. No major new things, but the quick start is a big difference. So, all right, well that's that. And now we're going to talk about self-hosting browser. Ken, I know you're
WASM technology.
well. I mean, there are way more pieces than just WASM, and we're not going to touch onto the how browser does what it does, unless you ask, and then I can try to answer. But I'm really tired of Restream and this little share
A little
feature.
glitch, yeah. It's
That's really
been
annoying.
plaguing me.
Restream, are you listening? You got to
They're
fix that.
not. We're going to have to poke them. We do give them money, so we should probably poke them.
We do give them money, so you should poke them. I agree, Ken.
Yeah, you're right.
All
You
right,
should totally do that.
you should
Hello.
totally do that. All right, so what are we doing? We're gonna try to set up an entire. We're not gonna try, Ken. We're gonna succeed setting up an entire OpenZiti environment, which has browser enabled in it. And I like to be prepared, and I am like what is it, 87% prepared for this. Had everything that worked up until the very last moment when I realized I had screwed something up in my script. But we'll start from the beginning and we'll take it slow. I'll try to make the this whole it's a big long list of commands. It's also going to be kind of a quick start. Well, not maybe not quick start, but if you follow along the quick start guide, I'm going to explain what happens at each step. And then there's going to be like the first half maybe is going to be all things that aren't particularly related to ZD, but are important and vital things to have. Things like having an IDP and things along those lines. So we'll start with all that,
Can you put
including
the end state or the ultimate goal or the use case in a nutshell?
yeah. Let's see if I can do that. So here is a browser window, and in here I should be able to go to dockerwhale.clint.demo.openziti.org. Now this is the one that should just work, right? And so what this will do is it oh okay, so I've reconfigured my client incorrectly. Let's start with my auth0 identity. Let me go back off screen and reconfigure this because I don't know if everybody needs to see my client
Well, just
identity.
by way of introduction, like BrowZer is a way for, if I'm self-hosting browser, the reason I want to do that is because I want to share some web app that I have, which is privately hosted, securely hosted, protected. I want to share that a with a specific audience to whom I have granted access without actually exposing the app directly. So
So let's
browser
go.
is a way of accessing a private app securely without exposing that app directly to
Yeah,
the internet.
I just made this diagram recently, and I've left off some mechanics behind this. But like you were saying, Ken, what is browser in a nutshell? Browser is a way to expose some web app that is in some private area without having to install something on your local client. Everything is
Like a VPN
bootstrapped.
client or a
Yep.
tunneler.
On your whatever your laptop is. You don't have to install anything. It is install less, and it allows you to expose that web app to the people you choose to by using OIDC, single sign-on sort of thing, and
Right.
the browser technology along with OpenZiti. So this is a incredibly simplified diagram of basically
Hmm.
what will happen. You'll have, as usual, you'll have your public edge router somewhere, which is the way in which the overlay technology works. Your browser will get the browser bits delivered to it through somewhere, which is not on this diagram. And then those browser bits know how to bootstrap the environment, talk to your IDP, and then allow that browser connection to actually succeed when connecting to that public edge router, which then, through the magic of OpenZiti, gets you to some offload point, whether it be a private router or whether it be a ZT Edge tunnel or whatever, so that you can actually access the content that you're trying to access.
If I
So yeah.
was coming into this naive, the first thing I would think is, oh, browser's a portal, but that's another category of thing that it is not. It is not a portal like a proxy.
I mean, is it? I don't know. Like it's
No,
a
because it downloads the client through the browser as like into your browser, and then your client connects directly
but
from
it's a
through the
portal.
terminal.
It's a portal on every single individual's machine in a way, right? It's not what you would classically think of as a portal with a listening port somewhere that receives traffic and then relays that traffic. It's not that kind of.
Correct.
It's not that kind of portal for
That's what I
sure.
mean. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sure. But it is its own little bespoke little portal. Every single person gets their own, right? So depending on how rigid you want with the portal metaphor, it could be your own little portal to wherever you're going, but not what I don't. Is there like an appliance
I
term
just mean
on
to
like a
distinguish it
web
from
portal?
existing solutions that bill themselves as secure web portals. It's a category of solution, and the way they work is that you log into the web page and it functions like a transport gatekeeper. So your traffic actually goes through it to the server app. But that's not the case here. Our traffic is going directly over the ZD data plane from the client web browser.
Gotcha. Yes. Yep. All right. Well, let's get into this then. All right. I have a couple of windows here, and I'm going to embiggen everything. And on the top window and the bottom window, they're just two different shells to a virtual machine that I created somewhere. And that mouse is going to drive me bananas. I hope it doesn't drive everybody else bananas. All right. So the first thing we're going to do once we have our brand new environment is we're going to delete everything. rmrf.zd. And I'm going to vi bash rc rc and get rid of anything that I've added to the bottom of this. Exit my shell and SSH back there. I do that just so I can get a clean terminal, right? And so there we are. And so now there's a whole bunch of steps that we're going to follow. The first steps that are important, well, to our OpenZiti install is we're going to do what you normally do, which is set a few environment variables and then run the quick start. So if I take these and put these over here, you'll see I'm going to make a password of ZDTV rules. I'm going to set a wildcard domain. Where's my mouse? I'm going to set a wildcard domain because I'm going to then use the external DNS of controller dot whatever. And this is what the controller will be known as when you do the quick start. And also, it'll end up being what the routers are known as. In fact, that might have been another thing that I messed up during my setup steps. But you'll get to see me debug this stuff live, which will be hopefully fun and exciting for everybody. Set a bunch of environment variable, more environment variables. We're going to use Let's Encrypt, and we're going to. These are the environment variables that we need to set up, right? And then we'll go ahead and run all that. But before we can get through all of this, we got to do all this other stuff up here. So first thing is you probably want an Ubuntu image, just because all these commands will work basically with Ubuntu, because that's what I tested it with. If you want to use some other variant of Linux, then it's on you to figure out where and why your command didn't work. You SSH there like I showed you. And then now we're going to do something. We're going to make a subdomain in Route 53, which I've actually already done. So if we go out to, if we come back over to here, Route 53 is a DNS provider. It doesn't matter what one you use. You don't have to use Route 53. I just happen to because it's the one I know best. Ken, I think you use, what's the one you use?
I use them all, but Cloudflare, DigitalOcean,
DigitalOcean. That's the one that,
Node.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one that you were using. Yeah. So I can come out here and I could do a dig for star.zdtv.demo.openziti.org. You can see it there, but so that's the IP address that I set this to. So if I curl to eth0.me, those should be the same thing. So I've already gone out into Route 53. I've already made a star.zdtv.demo.org, and I've already set it. I've added an A record for the IP of this particular machine.
Right.
So I've already done that.
And that's your
Okay,
VPS where you're gonna install everything.
that's right.
Install the Ziti.
Yep. And then I installed Docker. Now you may scoff at the methodology, but this just works, and I particularly like it. So I use the git docker shell script, and then I also use the command, the post install command of usermod -ag docker $user, so that you can add your user to the Docker group, and that allows you to run Docker without having to be root. So I've done that already as well. And then I ran snap install certbot. So certbot is a utility that will allow you to obtain a certificate from Let's Encrypt. And I'm going to use the DNS challenge in this case, because then every time I rerun this, it ends up just working. You don't have to use the DNS challenge. I use it because I find it to be the most easiest way to do it. And so when you run certbot, it'll ask you to go out there. Let's go ahead and run
You
this
do
just one
actually have
time.
to use the DNS challenge for a wildcard certificate.
Oh, do you? Is it?
Yes.
Oh, good to know. I didn't know that that would be a requirement.
Yep.
But when you go ahead and run this, you'll see that certbot will. Oh, it's already found the right. Let me use a different domain. Just get rid of all this. When you do this, certbot will tell you to go add a text record to your DNS provider, and that's the way Let's Encrypt will be able to verify that you actually own the domain that you're trying to create a certificate for.
Right.
And so, if you were to go out, and you can see I've already done this, but if I look at this and I do that dig again, and I do a dig for no, not that. It's underscore acme challenge, and then the type is text record. Let's do plus short. If you do that, you'll see I've already gone out and done this one time for Let's Encrypt and satisfied Let's Encrypt. So that once you do that, then when you run certbot, you'll end up with a couple of certificates that end up in your Etsy. I think it's Let's Encrypt, right? Yeah, Let's
Yeah.
Encrypt. live and sudo and ls. So you'll see the wildcard that you created, and you'll see the chain, full chain, private key, PEM. These are the two files that we need right now. By the way, BrowZer install still in its early stages, so there are some things that we need to straighten out. One of them is this. I put a issue in for allowing the BrowZer HTTP agent, which we'll see in a bit, to take a more flexible path. When you follow these instructions right now, you're going to copy the actual contents of these things someplace else, and then schmod them so that they're accessible by normal users. Wave your hands at all that. That'll get better. But we'll see that in a bit too. So you get these certificates when you're done. And then you're going to want to install things like JQ. You don't actually need Nginx. I don't know why I put Nginx in there, but you do need JQ because we'll use that later on. And then we will install NVM. And I use NVM because NVM is the easiest way, in my opinion, to install Node. And we'll use that for the ZAC. So I've already done these things as well. So if I go out here and I type Node version, see I've got a up-to-date version of Node. Again, I pull down the NVM install script and use it. I find that to be the easiest. And then you install Node. And that's all like the prerequisites. Although I do have, forget auth 0 setup. So you need to go to auth 0 and you need to make yourself a tenant in auth 0. And what I'm going to do is where's my mouse? I'm going to make myself a new tenant. I'm going to delete my application, I should say. I'm going to delete my existing one, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. Quick start settings. Let me delete this application. BrowZer. I'm on a different window right now. Just give me 1 second. All right.
Mysterious things happening off screen.
That's right.
Don't ask too many questions.
So when you've got your own domain in auth 0, you can come out here to the Applications tab and to Applications, and that's supposed to be gone. I guess I'll have to delete that again. Boop, boop, boop. Delete this application. BrowZer.
So we can start from scratch.
That's what I'm trying to do. I tried to do this before so that you wouldn't see my client ID, but whatever. There you go. So when you come to applications, you're going to want to click Create Application and choose Single Page Web Application. Give it a name. BrowZer Auth. Create. And then you'll get some information. You can just ignore that and click on Settings. And then, thankfully, the secret's not shown. That's good. And then you'll get some information like this. You'll get a domain. This is the domain for your tenant. You'll get a client ID. You can add a logo. You can add a description if you want. Don't change application type. And then you're going to want to change the allowed callback URLs. So I'm going to add https://star.ziti.demo.openziti.org. Is that the full URL? I think that's the full URL. And then also for the logout URLs. And that's all you need to do. And leave everything else, all the defaults, and click Save Changes. And once you've done that, you're then going to need this client ID, and we'll get to that here in a minute when we continue on. So we've done our auth 0 setup. Let me create an SPA application, copy relevant details. Now we're going to install OpenZiti in the way that we always do. I'm just going to copy all of this again. The Ziti binder, this will control where my version of Ziti goes to. This will be the Ziti password I want to use for my controller. I'm going to change this immediately down here anyway, so don't get your hopes up. And then Ziti wildcard domain. This is the domain that we want to be our wildcard, and we're going to use this controller.wildcard domain will be the external DNS name. So you can go to controller.zttvdemo.demo or zttvdemo openZiti.org. And then this is all just normal. Well, actually, not all of it. This is all just normal quick start stuff. And then these two things right here, LE chain and LE key, are a couple other environment variables that we'll use down below. You'll see that they're used here. They're used somewhere else in here. I don't exactly know where else, but like I said, I'm going to make all of this stuff available in a gist, and I'll put it into the quote unquote show notes. So we're going to just grab all of this stuff and go back to our window and paste it all in. And so it tells you that the server is going to be known as controller.zdtvdemo. And then I'm going to just run express install, just like you always do.
Got a quick question for you, Clint, while I'm
Yeah.
following along. Are those two new environment variables that start with LE underscore, are they just used by the quick start or just used by the browser script or both?
Really good question. I think I didn't find all of the places that I had used them. I mean, you don't need to use them, right? Like it's just informational. It's used in the browser section down here in order to create the alt server certs, which we'll see in a second. And it's supposed to be used in the Ziti setup to create the alt server certs. And I don't that this is the 87% part. This is the part that didn't actually work when I tried it. I got through all of the entire install, like we were talking before, Ken, and then noticed that my controller was not using an alternative server cert, and so that
I
won't
gotcha.
be happy
You're using
with.
the same cert chain for both browser and ZD.
Yeah, so there are two components that'll be installed. In fact, I should have had an architecture diagram, and I'm not going to edit this, but if you think of the, let me pop it up. Let me pop up our doc. If you think of this guy right here, so there's always the controller, and I'm adding the Let's Encrypt certificates to the controller so that when your browser communicates to the controller, or when the JavaScript inside of your browser or the WASM or whatever, you'll get an actual valid third-party verifiable certificate. And that's so that you don't get any nefarious problems with your browser, because browsers are obviously very attuned to making sure where you're going to is actually the intended recipient, right? Otherwise, they show you that scary. This is not.
Oh yeah, I remember now. I forgot that was a requirement for using browser because the actual web browser needs to connect to the
Right,
controller
right.
directly. So
And
that's
so, so we're going to we're going to use the alternative server certs features of the controller and present Let's Encrypt certificates, which also I think it's SNI it uses, which I can never remember what it stands for, but basically says it
server name
figures out
indication.
what's that?
Server name indication.
Yeah, that's the one. And what that means is if you come in, whatever URL you come in at, it's able to discover the certificate that should be presented for that particular URL that you would try to attach to. It lets you have multiple server names with multiple certificates to be presented at the same IP address. So we'll use that for the controller, but there's also a bit that's not shown on this diagram called the the BrowZer HTTP agent. It's a new piece of componentry, and it also needs to have a valid certificate. And so that's what we'll end up doing here in these steps. All right. So the quick start did complete. I'm going to install Zach. I'm going to leave Zach out of this equation. I'll fix this later. But what I do need to do, I do need to do this right here. And so I'm going to actually, let me take out the -I and just see what happens if I do this. What this is supposed to do is actually, let me throw a head on this, up arrow, pipe to head, take 20 lines. What this is supposed to do is it's supposed to be putting an alt server certs right here, and it's not successful for some reason. So it's not finding server cert. Yeah, well, it is incorrect for some reason. So I'm just going to add it manually. So let me SSH to my regular one, just so I can get the right format. And then vi.zd quick start.
So the bookmark right now is in the Ziti controller configuration step.
Yes, it is in the controller configuration step. That's right. And it looks like I have deleted my other instance of OpenZiti. Oh no, I know why. I know why. There it is. 17. YAML. I need. Oh, that's interesting. I don't have alternatives. Oh, it's not in this section. That's why. Okay. Maybe it did work then. Maybe this does work. Let me run this again and take off. So what I was looking for, Ken, is I was looking for the wrong place inside of here. Let me do this in less instead. And I'm gonna have to make this smaller for just a second. This should be going down into the web section. That's where it should be, which is almost
Right,
down
because
here.
you just wanted a
Oh yeah,
verifiable server cert.
yes.
Yeah.
So that's what I needed right there. I need that to happen. Okay, so this is actually working. Good. So let's go ahead and just run this as is then. Slide back in. And then, nope, Control C. There it is. Now if I look at this file, should have let's encrypt in here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now I'm not making use of alternative server cert, so I just replaced the server cert. So now if I do a systemctl restart cd controller sudo. Now if I go back to browser window, controller,
And you would place the server cert on the client API?
both technically.
Oh, they're combined, client
Yeah.
and
So
management?
now when I come out here, you can see it is a secure connection.
Right.
All right. Cool. That's what I wanted to do. Great. And then this is also important. I have to do this as well. So when you're using Let's Encrypt with OpenZiti, you need to go and get the correct certificate chain from Let's Encrypt. Their top level certificate is cross-signed, and that causes a problem if you don't go and get the correct certificate. So
Okay, so if you change the server certificate for the client API, then identities need to be able to find the CA cert, the issuer cert, in the trust bundle, even if it's third-party verifiable?
it's the problem is OpenZiti is will end up finding the wrong cross-signed root CA certificate. There are two root certificates in Let's Encrypt. I don't remember exactly why, but they changed it at some point because they had to. I think one, I don't know if it was compromised. I don't know what the exact reason was. But if you go out and you look, you'll find that there are actually two root certificates for the Let's Encrypt chain that comes from Certbot. And that ends up causing a problem with OpenZiti because it wants to find a single chain or a single certificate authority. I don't remember if it was finding the wrong one. Jeez, excuse me. I don't remember if it was finding the wrong one, but if you don't do this, it doesn't end up working.
So you're
So
tacking on the Let's Encrypt issuer cert chain to the trust bundle that CA serves up for edge clients.
that's right. Yep, I'm putting it into the chain itself, and then also I think there was another problem around. I think our clients don't use the OS Trust Store and require us to put these into. It was something along those. Oh no, that's what it was. Ubuntu had a different. I think Ubuntu chose a different root CA to present. I can't remember exactly why. I don't want to get into that detail. I can't talk intelligently right now because I don't remember the problem. But I believe the tunneler, our ZDH tunnel on Ubuntu, did not work successfully because Ubuntu included the older certificate chain, And Windows and Mac included the newer one. It was something along those lines.
Right. Well, in any case, you're providing an explicit trust factor instead of relying on discovery of verifiable certs, and that's fine.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So at this point, I should have a controller that's up online. I should have a router that's online. And so if I go back to my, did I do all of these steps? I don't remember if I did all of these steps or not. I know I did. Let's go back and just look. Let's look to see if I catted a bunch of stuff. This was supposed to go smoother, Ken, but the certificate chain threw me off. All right. So I set up the edge router. Creating the edge router. What happened here? The request failed? Did I? Oh, I didn't stop the Ziti controller. All right. Stop. Two things. I have to start all over again, but I can just copy and paste what I have. Ziti. So let's just go back and do all this all over again. Not this, just this. So we're going to install OpenZiti. We're going to set those environment variables, set up sets of environment variables, all these things, source the function, run express install, create our systemd controller files from our systemd router file, put them in the right places, restart them and make sure they work, and then source the environment. And that takes like, I don't know, 20 seconds. So let's go ahead and let that cook off again. While that happens, I'll get these next little steps, which lets me change my password. Also, lets me set up the Ziti completions. And so we'll have to just chat amongst ourselves for a moment. All right. Almost ready. Okay, so we see them running. Great. So now I can change my password. Cool. Now I can do the, I'm going to skip Zach. I do have to do this stuff right here.
Did you have a new config
Yep, it replaced everything. And then restart the controller.
with the
And
new
now I
managed
should be,
config?
yep, now I should be back to here. Yay. All right. So now let's install the BrowZer bits. So the BrowZer bits, you need Docker. We've already configured that up above. It has a WebSocket port that is going to be configured in your edge router. So if we look at down here, these bash commands will go into your edge router's config and modify the quick starts edge router to work with WebSockets. And so that's important because BrowZer will need a WebSocket enabled router. And then we'll take a look at those differences once it's done. So let's just go ahead and fill out this stuff. My client ID. I need the client ID now. So let's go back to here. Let's copy this. Let's put that copy ID in. And then when you're setting up BrowZer, you're going to see, well, actually afterwards, you're going to see down below, there's a here doc that is used to set up the Docker Compose file. And inside that Docker Compose file is where you declare the services in Ziti, which you want to expose via BrowZer. We'll take a look at that in just a second. But that's what these are setting. So I'm going to provide a Docker whale example. We're going to give it a WebSocket, a secure WebSocket wildcard domain for the router advertised port, advertised
Right,
address.
because everything's on one address.
Right. And then change the port number. So obviously port 8505 or whatever you choose has to be available. This is, I don't think used anymore, so I'll get rid of that. And then this will be where we copy. Remember I said we had to copy those Let's Encrypt certificates. This will get used by Docker when you mount the files in the Docker. We're going to just put them into here. And so that's what all of this is going to do. Let's go ahead and then we're going to back up the original config file just in case. Do those things. All right, backed it up just in case. Now we're going to sed and then diff. And so this is going to add the alternative server certs that we talked about. It's going to update the bottom section for the transport. Oh, I don't want to copy that. I want to do these things. So
I see that the variable name is different for Ziti browser WSS port, and then on line 137, you have Ziti WSS port.
oh, look at that. It's a good call. Probably redundant. I bet this isn't actually used. It was probably intended to be used. Yeah, it's not used. And just we'll leave it there, and maybe I'll put it back. Like I said, I'll fix this
Ah,
in the show notes. I'll put it back. I
now it
got rid
lines
of it.
up.
I got rid of it for you. Thank you. Good eagle eyes there. All right. So if we look at the differences, you'll see we now have a new binding, a new edge binding in our config of WSS colon any IPv4 port 8505 and advertise this. And then we've also commented out or uncommented the transport section that has all of this default, write timeout, read timeout, stuff like that, and added an alternative server certs section down here as well. And so that's what those magical sed commands ended up doing on your router config. And so now if I restart the router config, or reset the router, I should say,
Now it should be providing a WebSocket.
I should be able to get WSS 8505, and it should be telling me this is secure. So this needs to be secure. This can't be one from NetFoundry like it's showing, which means it feels as though the alternative server certs are not correct. So this, let's see if it exists. It does exist. It's the right one. Permission denied. Did I restarted the router? I mean, it wouldn't have had this otherwise.
Does the router process have permission to read that file?
It should be. It's running as root.
Okay.
Yeah. Router.
The router. Unknown certificate.
Yeah, and that's okay. That means it didn't see anything coming in.
Oh, yeah, that was you coming in.
Yeah. So if I look at this, so I don't have alternative server certs up here. I don't think I need them up there.
What section is that on? Is that the WebSocket?
It's on the yep.
Yep.
That looks accurate. Let me consult my other one to see if I needed to update the.
So it has server cert and key specified twice, because there's one at the top level of the WebSocket and then one under Alt.
Oh, somehow I missed this in my script. So I got to fix that too. Oops. That's what I think was the problem. No, not journal. I want to restart. Okay, there's the restart. So now if I come here, all right, cool. So now we see the WebSocket is valid, and you get the 404 not found because I'm not actually using a WebSocket, right?
Right.
I just did an HTTP request. Okay, so that is now working as well. And
Interesting that the WebSocket server responds with an HTTP response, a 404 at all.
Yeah, it surprised me too, but I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's useful, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Give you something.
So now we've done all of that stuff. We've got, which is like the first half, right? Now we're going to there's a little bit of Ziti involved in there. So like I said, if you diff those two files, where's that diff? You should see the alt server certs specified at the top. You should see your new binding, and then you should see the stuff at the bottom. I'll have to ask Kurt if the alt server certs are required down here. I don't know if they are
Seems
or aren't.
redundant.
It does, yeah. Seems like an opportunity to make something better. But now we're going to configure OpenZiti for BrowZer. To do that, we're going to use an object prefix. This is just when I make the objects in the ZDCLI, they'll just start with browser.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to use the OpenID configuration URL that your OIDC provider most likely provides. So if we go and do this curl, you'll see I get back a pile of JSON.
Is
If I
it
add,
really OIDC if it doesn't provide that?
there are two specs. So
Oh, okay.
the second spec adds this discovery endpoint,
Okay.
and the first one doesn't have it. So yeah, and if you look, you can see these are the bits that we need. This is the OIDC configuration that we need to inform OpenZiti about. So if we take a look, we're going to want the issuer and the JWKS. And what the issuer is it's who actually is going to be issuing JWTs. In fact, I got to copy all of this. Let's do that. And then if I echo my issuer, you can see this is who is issuing the identities or the JWTs. And then JWKS is a neat endpoint. We can go and inspect that real quick. Can you hear that dryer in the background?
No, I don't hear it.
Good. Good, good. My daughter is blowing her drying her hair. Minus S. If we go here and pipe to curl minus S, pipe to GQ. You can see what this is it is the material necessary for the OpenZiti controller to verify a JWT that is presented. And so a nice, easy way of configuring OpenZiti is to allow it to use a JWKS endpoint. And so that's what we're going to end up doing here. And that's why we've made a JWKS variable. And you can see we can get all of this information from the OpenID configuration. The one thing we can't get from the configuration that we need is the audience. So since this is auth 0, we know that auth 0 will use the client ID, not curl, will use the client ID. Echo. So that's the audience that we're going to set. And so when we make our external JWT signer, we're going to use those values. And signed by an unknown authority. Well, that's really interesting. What happened there? Unable to connect to the server. Well, let's see what did this actually show us.
So that error message was coming back from the ZDCLI when it tried to talk to the management API?
Seems that way. Did I? Oh, interesting. CD. Let's see. CD Edge login. Yeah.
Maybe that is that. Okay, so that information is probably left over. That is the CA
Yeah.
certs are
So
probably left
what?
over from a previous
That's what it
instance.
was. Yep.
Yeah.
Remember, I had to delete my
Yeah.
my whole environment.
Nuke and
And
pave.
so it had pulled down the CA, cached them for me. So very friendly,
Right.
but but it was wrong. So by just
Yeah.
logging in, I fixed that problem. So now I got to go delete ZD Edge, delete external JWT signer, whatever this thing's called. All right. So now we can come back to here, copy this, paste this. Hey, now we have a signer ID. And now we're going to tie that signer to an authentication policy. An authentication policy is what is used by the controller to authenticate an incoming claim. And so we're going to create an authentication policy. We're going to give it a name, and we're going to say primary external JWT is allowed, and the primary signers are the one that we just made. So we're basically tying an authentication policy and external JWT signer together so
Right.
that an auth policy can use this particular signer. But we're not done yet. I got to make identities too, but apparently I'm doing that down below. So down here is where I actually use the things. So let's go back to where we are. And then That is setting up Ziti for success right there. We've already set Ziti up for success. In fact, I'm going to move this bit up
When
to
you created the signer and gave
here.
it the issuer is the URL, correct? To Auth0?
The issuer is the Auth0 tenant.
Right. So that's where, so
Happens to
then
be, yeah.
the implementation of OIDC now knows that it can go there and fetch the pub keys for the
That's
signer.
and that's no, that's because we informed the external JWT signer of the JWKS endpoint. When you run ZD Edge create external JWT signer, you'll see you have two options. One of which is the JWKS endpoint. That is one way to do it. Another way is if you don't have a JWKS
Ah,
endpoint, you can upload a certificate. And then
right.
ZD will shred that cert and get what it needs and put it in the right places so that you can successfully authenticate afterwards. But if you have a JWKS, you might as well use it. I don't know if
Yep.
this is also in the spec or not, but all of the ones I've seen so far all have JWKS endpoints.
Same.
All right. And so then I've moved this from down below up to the top. You can see I make a couple of identities. I just space delimit some email addresses. And then in a for loop, I create an identity. I create the identity name. And then I use the auth policy. That's really important. So these identities will use the auth policy that we just created moments ago, right? So this auth policy is then it's set into a variable and reused when we make this identity. Another important point is we set the external ID. So when you log into your IDP, you're going to get a JSON document that is a JWT, a signed document. It's going to have three parts because that's what a JWT has. A header that tells you some information that is used to verify the document, the body, which has the information that we need in it, and then a signature. The body is really what you care about. Well, I mean, it's all important, but the body is going to have the relevant information to ZD after it verifies the document. Inside of there will be a subject, an SUB, and that subject will have some value inside of it. And that value in this case is going to be my email address. And so I know that when I use Auth0, my subject will be my email. So when I set the external ID, I'm using the email address. Does that make sense, Ken?
Yeah, what I heard is that this external ID value needs to match the subject property, the SUB property of the JWT claim set from the IDP.
I believe I believe you can change the property name.
Ah,
So
default
if
is sub.
it's right, the default is
Yeah,
sub. Again, thanks for mentioning that. If you some of them like Keycloak allows you to define whatever you want. And
sure.
so you can change that claims property and that property is going to be in the JSON that comes back in that JWT.
Right.
So yeah, if it's email or if it's, user ID or something along those lines, you can override that and change it. Yep. And then since I'm going to be dialing my Docker whale example, I'm going to use Docker whale.dialers. I've set all this up so that will just use an attribute as opposed to hard coding or directly linking to identities. All right. So now we're going to finish off, hopefully we're going to finish off our browser install. We're going to copy those scripts someplace. Again, this was one of the files or one of the environment variables set up here. We're just putting them someplace and staging the files for now because they need to be usable inside of the Docker world that we're going to start up here in a second. You can see we're going to make a Docker compose file. And the way I chose to do that is to just move them from wherever they are to a new location. So if your search expire and you're doing this, don't forget you got to put them back there because this is where the Docker compose file will find them. And so inside of the Docker compose file, you'll see the browser dir is going to be referenced. I'm going to pause on the compose file because it's the last piece of the puzzle and it's important. I have commented out restart always. You probably want restart always. I commented it out because I often want it to fail and not just keep
You want to
restarting it.
notice.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's a log dir that you can set up if you're interested in having access to the logs. There is in fact, I should just use the browser dir for that too. I didn't get far enough along.
It may be beside the point, but I think with Compose you can mount any directory on the source side of your bind volume, so it might not be necessary to copy them into place.
No, no, no. So okay, that's a good point. That's a good point. Let's go back and address that point. So Ken's saying, hey, you might not need to copy these things. You can bind them wherever. But Ken, if you look at this, what you will discover, ls, what you'll discover minus L is that it is a symlink.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to tell Docker to follow the symlink.
Well, you
So
would just mount the real
no,
path.
you can, but then if you refresh your certificate, you got to remount it. So I don't know which of those two options is worse. You know, you that's why what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to mount this directory and then I can refer to the symlink because then when it changes it won't be a problem. But you just can't do that right now. And
I understand.
that was the enhancement I've asked Kurt to implement. Yeah.
Okay.
But thanks. That's a good point. That's the reason why wasn't going to get into it, but since you asked, that's
File
the reason.
system shenanigans.
Yeah, that's the reason why we had to do it this way. Okay, so I have copied those files, and now let's go ahead and let's just go ahead and make the Docker Compose file. So if I then I want that, I want to look at the file. Look at the file. Actually, let's use VI because it does pretty syntax highlighting. You can see I commented at the restart. You can see it now uses the directory I told it to find those Let's Encrypt certificates. It uses port 443. I really urge you not to change 443 either. Kurt assures me there's a way to change this. I wasn't successful yet at it. So this is part of the bumps first look. You know, this is first look on how to host BrowZerMost, right? This is all dripping wet type stuff. So I would just say use 443 for now. Some obvious log level type stuff, your controller host, your agent host. Notice the agent host is a little bit different. Your controller host is a little bit different, controller versus browser.
Yeah.
This is where the locations of those files are. This is what I want to be able to control. Like I would be able to specify the full path in here if I could, but I just can't yet. Then this little bit down here is interesting. So you can make an array of these. For every entry in this target array, one browser-based service will be exposed.
Okay.
And so I'm saying I want to make a URL called docker-whale.zdtv.demo.openziti.org.
Sure.
And then this will be the name of the service, which the identity that I will authenticate as, Clint, will need to be able to access.
Right.
Where my issuer URL is, let's make sure that's valid, just to make sure I did all the things correctly without quotes. No, actually, I wanted to do the dot well known OIDC configuration, right? Screwed it all up. Well known. Open. Is it OpenID config? Oh yeah, there it is. All right, cool. All right, so we know that I seem to have done that right. All right, so things are mostly in place. The last piece of the Ziti puzzle is I need to make the particular service. And so that's what I'm doing down here. And I also have to run the Hello World service that I want. Oops. So if I ever failed connectivity, port is already allocated. Oh, I must have already run this Docker ps-a. I have. All right, so let's delete these. Docker rm this and this. Oh, run it a few times apparently. Let's get rid of this and this and this. Hey, that looks a lot better. Right. Now let's go ahead and run just this one. Now when I curl to http:// localhost 2000, that's what I should be seeing. All right, cool. So now I have to create that service, and so there's a function that I wrote that just basically it's like a quick start how to make a function or how to make a service from the Ziti
Right.
CLI. So you can just call create service, give it a name, give it an intercept, give it a port, give it a
Right.
termination place, and all that sort of stuff. And so, bop, 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 there's that. We already did this. Now we're going to authorize the service. So the first thing I need to do is I need to find my router identity, which is that. And then I need to update that identity with Docker whale binders. And when I do
Okay.
this, now if I do a journal ctl fuzd router,
So
if I
your
do
router tunnel
this,
is going to host the whale service.
you should see this received terminator created notification.
So the
Oh,
controller log,
that's the router log.
the
Yep.
router log.
Yep. So now if I go back to the .ziti browser.yaml file, now if I go here, if I did everything correctly, not curl, if I did everything correctly, I should get to that whale. Okay, that happens sometimes, but notice it instantly reloaded itself. And something didn't go quite right, Ken. What is it that I could have done wrong?
Well, it got a connection refused.
Oh, so
So
this is
it's
another.
going to the
Well, this is another thing that happens. I have been using the exact same instance of BrowZer. So I'm actually going to go in and clear out all of my storage because
You think maybe
I
the web browser remembers the wrong address or something?
not address, but there could be state involved in that service worker from the one before that is relevant to this one. Don't forget, I just deleted everything and reloaded it.
Yeah.
All right. So now let's see. No resource with the given identifier. Connection refused. Did I turn on
It
my
looks like
agent?
it's not getting a it's not getting a TCP connection for on port 443. Can you confirm you?
Yeah,
Well,
I have a
my first thought is troubleshooting that
I have
connection
a
refused
feeling
message.
I have a feeling I didn't restart my agent either. So I am going to I terminated actually. Let me kill. I want to I want to Docker compose down this fee. Make sure that thing's gone for good. All right, now I'm going to
So
up.
now your Docker Compose PS should show port 443 forwarded to the agent.
Let's do. Yep.
Yep. And now you
Over
should
here.
definitely get something other than connection refused.
Yeah, and I'm going to clear all this stuff again. Just and then reload it.
That's looking good. Sending you to the IDP.
Yep, I got an error. No edge routers are assigned and online to handle the requested connection. Cool. We are almost there.
So it
So
did download Ziti into your web browser, and you got a
it
Ziti error
bootstrapped
message.
it bootstrapped Ziti. Yeah. So let's see. What is the problem? Do we have a Ziti edge list? Edge routers. I don't have completion in this window.
I didn't see you do a step for edge router policy.
So the edge router doesn't have a public attribute. Somehow, oh, no, that's weird. I don't know why that's the case. Did I delete the router and re-enroll it? I don't believe I did. Ziti edge update edge routers. Oh, why'd you copy that? Edge routers dash a public edge router public. Now list our edge routers. Now we get a public. Let's list our ERPs. Make sure we have an all edge routers, public and all. All right. Now what
Okay.
happens? What do you think, Ken? Will it work? Where's our network?
You should not get the
Okay,
same
so
error.
well, let's hope. Let's hope. I do see no edge routers here. Let me go back one more time just to make sure. I am a little leery about the internal state that might be
Yeah.
being kept around. All right, good. That's what I wanted to see.
Now you should have a JWT.
And I see services, so that's all good. Okay, no edge routers are assigned and online.
Is that a new error message?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, that's right at 12.
1158. Yeah. So that's going to be. Let's do policy advisor, Ziti Edge, policy advisor minus identities minus Q. So it does have bindability. Clint is dial able. So, and it has a common router. And so why would it tell us we don't have one online? No edge routers are assigned and online. That is not what I expect.
Maybe run the policy advisor for the service as well.
Well, sure, I can do that. All okay. Well, let's try a private window just to see
If you get the
state.
same result.
Oh boy.
Just how hard will it be to prove you're you?
I gotta come over and click on a button and make sure it's me, put in my password.
Yep.
Give me a second.
Should have added me as a user instead of Kurt.
I can do that real quick though. We'll do that in a second. Let's see, F12, console, network. So now it should be downloading the Ziti browser runtime, which still is large and will be slimmed down in the future. So it takes a few minutes, not a few minutes, a few seconds. This does not seem like it's responding to me though. Oh, okay. Now we've seen this particular problem too. If it gets stuck here, I have to exit the browser. Oh boy. Actually, I can't exit the browser. That's fun. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start Edge up. We'll bring Edge to the party. Again.
Did you run into a problem with that particular web browser you were using?
Yeah. Yeah. There's again, when you're doing development work like we are, let me see if I get my, hang on. I have to put my password in somewhere else, and I can't talk to you at the same time as I type the big long thing. Yeah, when you are destroying the world like I have done by ripping out the Docker agent and all that sort of stuff, it's invasive to the implementation. And so it needs to have some extra hardening done around, what happens when crazy off the wall things occur that aren't anticipated, not expected. Where's the console? There it is. All right, so now it looks like it's going to work here. Let's see, Docker whale now complete. So this is a brand new browser. The very first time, like I was saying, the very first time you do something in browser, the service worker has to come online. It has to get a bunch of state, it has to be downloaded, it has to do some things. So the very, very first time you connect, it's a little bit slow. That's going to do nothing but get better. And this is still spinning. Actually, let's see if there's now a log message in our router. Failed to dial the fabric. Retries creating circuit. So now we're getting all the way through to the router, but something has gone wrong on the router's end. Error creating route. Dial TCP 127.2000. Connection refused. Curl. Okay. Docker PS. Start. The CC. Hello world again. I can curl there. All right. Now, if I come back here and try this one more time, we did it. We did it, Ken.
All
We
right.
did it.
So
So,
the last issue there was connection refused from the router's
well, I
perspective,
mean, it
which
doesn't
is
work. It doesn't work when you don't turn the service on.
right. Because
So,
you
I
did a
was
compose down, and the Hello World, the Hello Whale service was part of that.
no, no. If you remember before, I had like five of these things running, and I removed them all,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
intended to turn them all back on, and then obviously
It
forgot.
wasn't in the compose project with the
No, it's not in
browser
the
agent.
it's not in the Compose
Gotcha.
project. No.
Okay.
Whew. All right. Well, I
Nice
mean,
job.
we succeeded. It did take a full hour. Uh, it wasn't quite as smooth as silk. We didn't see any chat messages come in, so people probably eyes are rolled back in their head and wondering what's going on. But hey, we did it. So I mean, that's pretty cool. I'm happy with that. So I'll try to go through these steps and make them a bit nicer, shall we say? Try to get the whole flow more streamlined. Put up a gist, put it in the show notes in the description of this URL here, and I suppose I have to do it over on Twitter. Or maybe if you're watching on Twitter, go find it on YouTube and find them there. I think that's what we'll do.
Well, that's the smoothest I've seen self-hosting go. I mean, we're just plumbing the process, so yeah, streamlining one step at a time.
Yeah, yeah, right. Like it is, it's a real great point, Ken. Thanks for making that. I mean, it is brand new, dripping wet stuff, right? Like, and I've only done it myself a handful of times, so it will only get better from here.
Yeah, and just how automatic can this be? Like, if we assume that, uh, as somebody who, if we assume that I'm going to bring my own Auth0 account, and Auth0 is great because they have web keys for Google, etc., and you don't have to go to those identity providers to make your own key. You can just use their dev keys for testing stuff like this. So that's super convenient. But assuming that we're going to use Auth0, like how automatic can this be?
I mean, I think it could be pretty automatic. Like, not to shill the company too much, but like we have the SaaS side of CloudZiti, right? And CloudZiti automates all of this. So, I mean, that's fully automatic, right? So it could be fully automatic. It's just from our perspective on the open source stuff, it's not nearly as nice as that because
Mhm.
there's a lot of work that went into making it automatic, right?
Do you feel
So
like it's recommended to have a dedicated Ziti for your browser, or does
no,
Ziti remain general purpose?
no, 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 no. It's not like Xerox. Xerox will also fix that too, right? That's coming in a new release. But no, you should absolutely add browser to your existing OpenZD if
Okay.
you want to enable browser. 100%. One caveat right now, also on that dripping wet new stuff, new tech vibe. You can only have one WebSocket enabled router right now. So
Okay.
if you want to have a WebSocket enabled router, only turn one on. Otherwise, weird things will happen in your network.
You said you should add it to your existing Ziti, but you did that little dance with the issuer certificate going into the trust bundle, and that makes me think that if you're going to add browser, you have to do it earlier than later because the identities that are enrolled are only going to have the trust bundle that was published at the time they were enrolled.
Mm,
Or is it understood that, or
it
the
is a
SDKs and tunnelers all like self-update
so
from the
so
trust
that's
bundle?
a really good question actually. If you have an existing OpenZD right now, if it followed the quick start and you don't use alternative server certs, it's going to have either IP based certificates or it will have a EC2 type of host name, right? Or whatever your provider is. You'll have some name that you're already using to access your server. When you set up the wildcard, you should probably just make it something different. because if you make it something different, then you can do the alternative server certs, right? And then if you come in on the old URL, you'll get the
You
old
see the same
PKI.
server cert.
Yeah. And then if you
Yeah,
come in on the new URL, you'd get the new PKI, right?
that makes sense. Yeah,
And then
that would be a
and we're only
non-break.
catting on top of it too. So we're only adding extra on top. So any new identities would get all that as well. So
Right.
I think don't, till you go try it, don't know, but I think it would just work out. If
That
you
reminds me that alt
reuse,
server certs do respect SNI. So
yeah,
the old name or IP coming in, if that matches the IP SAN or DNS SAN of the old server cert on the client
right,
API, that'll still
right.
work. And if it matches the new alt server cert, then those clients will get that one and it'll be verifiable. And I also remember the gotcha that if you happen to have colliding, like ambiguous DNS SAN, then the controller will serve up the server cert that matches first, just the first one that it fetches. So it's important
Mm,
to have unambiguous
yeah,
DNS SANs on your server certs.
right, right. Yeah, you definitely, yeah, definitely don't want to have overlap. Just you want to be predictable. It is always good. In fact, I want to actually now I want to go try this, Ken. Let's see if I go back and I get my actual public URL of this thing. If I click on details, oh come on, Amazon, not now. I want to see it work. Select an instance, copy the address,
Should
go
I share your
to
screen?
not yet. Just see if it
Okay.
works. Expect it to. Yeah, perfect. Look at that. So if I go to 161-190, actually, let's just make sure. Is it the same one? This is
Was that the old
journal
DNS SAN
CTL. Yep.
of the cert?
FU ZD controller, right? So if I come to here, and if this is the same one, this log will advance. Right? Boom. There it goes.
Yeah.
So that is one URL that you can obtain and access. And if you go and look at this certificate, you can see it was common
Oh
name.
no,
Where
you're still getting the Let's Encrypt
that
cert.
is Let's Encrypt. What's happened here?
Well,
Do
is
I
the
not
address in
understand?
your is the URL in your address bar, is that domain name a DNS SAN that's for a server certificate that's still loaded for the controller in the
I w-
identity
I
section?
honestly I would have thought so. Oh no 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 no! Oh, nice, Ken. You're right. Thanks for that. I forgot. In this situation, I simply replaced
You
the server
replaced it,
cert.
yeah. So the controller
Excellent.
doesn't know about the old cert.
Look at you go. Look at you. That's right. Yep. I should try that though. I'm now
But
interested.
if it had both of them loaded, then it would decide based on the DNS SAN
Right.
matching the SNI of the request,
All right.
which one to present.
Yeah. Do you want to try it? We can try it real quick.
Sure.
Let's do a VI of this, and we'll go down to alt. Actually, I don't have an alt in this. I need to go. Let's do it down here. VI of this. So I can just get this. So I can go to here and go to web and come down to here and add it here and make YAML happy like this.
So the server cert up and key up there, one level up.
Yeah, I gotta fix that.
Yeah.
It should be,
Set that back to the intermediate. The
yeah,
server cert from the intermediate
yeah.
CA.
I gotta find what it is. Oh, it's gonna be at the top of this here. It's gonna be these two things. Okay, there's that.
So you have to specify the identity in order to of the web binding in order to specify the alt because it's
Well,
necessary.
no. I could probably do it at the top too. So like, this is the overriding area. This is for the edge controller as opposed to the data, no, the control plane.
Hmm. Correct.
So okay, that looks right. I could have, to your point, Ken, I could have only put it here, right? But
Right.
because the quick start overrides it, I'm pretty sure I have to put it where I put it.
Okay.
Sudo systemctl restart Ziti controller. Oh, go away. Now, if
Now
I
you should
come
have the old server
here,
cert from the intermediate CA. There
Net
we go.
Foundry, perfect.
Yep.
So now if I do ctrl.zdtv.demo.openziti.org, clearly we don't understand something, or I did it wrong. That is
That's
also wrong.
still
All
got
right.
the old server cert.
Well, let's slap those things up on the top level. See what happens. That looks right, right? It doesn't have to be
Um,
indented, right? No, not indented.
I believe that's correct.
You
Yeah,
know,
the shape of the identity section is the same wherever it appears.
sure. Yeah, I was just trying to make sure I have my YAML happy because sometimes YAML is a little bit finicky. Let's do this one more try, and then we'll call it a ZDTV. It does not seem like it wants to work. Well, we have something to go ask Andrew about, don't we? All right. Well, cool. Maybe there's a bug. Maybe we just haven't tried it out. But that should have worked, right? With SNI, you would expect this one to be the original PKI and this one to be the less encrypted PKI.
Yeah, but you only really need to figure that out if you are retrofitting an existing ZD network that has important identities out in the wild with
It's very
BrowZer.
true.
And
Very
if you're
true.
just building a network, then all your identities can use the new cert.
Probably wouldn't matter at all. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that was a fun ZDTV, Ken.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right, bud. We'll see you next time. See you, everybody. Thanks a
All
lot.
right.
And
Take care.
we'll see you next ZDTV.